Good morning, everyone, and thank you guys so much for joining the stream today. We have a couple plays that are moving in a pretty big way this morning. I would say the biggest one is Boeing. Boeing has been on a great uptrend over like the past 3 weeks or so, and it's really been a while since we saw this one have a sustainable uptrend. And Boeing is moving very well this morning. They actually had some pretty good news coming out of China. Basically, their 737 MAX jet could resume service in China as soon as this month, according to a Bloomberg report. So that's pretty big, and definitely Boeing shareholders are liking that news.
Yeah, they really are. Boeing's popping up quite a bit this morning. It even popped up above that resistance there, right around $220. We got a pretty clear break of that. So hopefully it ends up holding up today. You know, it did hit 225 and start to pull back a little bit here at open. So hopefully whenever the market does open, we finally see, maybe another big leg up with some nice green momentum there. I know I'd love to see it. And Boeing on the daily chart has been down in this range for a long time. So I could possibly see it maybe getting up towards that 230 resistance today.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. It's a runner, Tom. And when we look back throughout history, this one isn't afraid to run up for like a couple weeks. And when it runs up, it's normally like with a lot of momentum. And with IV this low, earnings right around the corner, it might be a potential play, and then plus that good news. So it's definitely one to keep on your watch list. And then, Tom, you already know we have to talk about TSM. They had earnings this morning. They reported a record quarterly profit. They beat analyst forecasts, and they also issued an upbeat outlook amid surging demand for semiconductors, and this is coming from CNBC. But either way, they had good earnings, and the stock is flying.
Yeah, it really is up 6%. It has this big green candle here right before market open. That's great to see. And that's actually great numbers to see that their sales increased 24% and all those great numbers with the EPS. I think that's awesome for their company. And I'm really glad to see it, Mike. A lot of people were maybe thinking TSM might fall with the chip sector, but hey, I'm really glad to see them doing well. And they're honestly right almost back to that all-time high at 142.20. So maybe we'll start to see a pretty big break of that all-time high pretty soon. I really hope we see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's running, so I wouldn't doubt it. So either way, that one's looking pretty good. Some other stocks that are trending up this morning are like Enphase and a couple other ones, but Enphase is running in a pretty strong way. These solar stocks have just been taking a beating over like the past couple of weeks or so. Enphase actually had kind of good news on this one. They had good news related to their battery storage, but they also got upgraded by Guggenheim, and they also had like I guess you could say a price target of 200 by KeyBank, and then they had another I believe they had another upgrade as well. But either way, a couple upgrades and then some good news, and the stock's at a pretty good level, so looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's at a really good level for the long term down here, right at this support, like right around $150. I think it's a great price point for shares or, even shorting puts. But I would say probably shares right here, given how expensive it is. But looking at it overall, like I really like Enphase, Mike, and I really like FSLR too. I like the whole solar sector in general. And honestly, I'm looking at grabbing a lot of these companies for the longer term.
Yeah, and of course that doesn't mean that this is the bottom right now, but it's like if you see a good deal, which it looks like to be in Unphase's case, it's like sometimes you just want to buy those shares and hold, and if it dips more, then hey, it just gives you an opportunity to buy more at a better price.
Yeah, it really does. And that's really great to see that a lot of those analysts kept those prices up there. Like you said, somebody, I think you said T-Bank came in right around $200 right there.
Yeah, looks like KeyBank, right? Or actually, yeah, okay, yeah. So KeyBank, 200, and then the other Guggenheim was 213. So, the downside, though, is that KeyBank's original price target was 280, but still, like, 200 still higher than the current price. And then even with Guggenheim, it was at 213.
Yeah, I'm glad that they kept it up there like that. I've been seeing some analysts, downgrading some stocks lately, some of these growth stocks, and it's kind of sad to see some of them downgrading them all the way down to these really low prices. So I'm glad to see that they kept it up with Enphase.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes these analysts just say some ridiculous things. Like one analyst,
Yeah.
I believe on Tesla's giving like a $50 price target or $100 or something just insane. It's like, really? It's like, come on. But Then again, some of these analysts will be like, all right, Tesla has a $8,000 price target, and then like so like sometimes they just like throw these random numbers out there, and but either way, I would say not really to look at what the analyst says, but just to see how the stock reacts to it. So, because like let's say like a stock's at like a low level, and then you have like 3 upgrades coming in, like you can expect buyers to come in because of that. But I wouldn't just blindly listen to some analyst.
Yeah, definitely. It can get crazy. I've seen analysts throw out the craziest stuff, like Tesla going bankrupt was the one that really got me. I remember so many people said that they would be gone by now, and look at them now. I mean, wow. I mean, talk about even, $100 a share. Like there were people talking just a few years ago about Tesla being totally eradicated from the market, and that would just be a crazy thing to hear. I know that Enphase is a good buying point, and yeah, those analysts can really get kind of crazy sometimes. Definitely take what they say with a grain of salt. I know we were even talking about this in the chat a couple days ago.
Yeah, it's the same guy who's shorting DraftKings, Jim Chanos. He was short Tesla, and he lost so much money. And like it was literally a couple years ago, and he's trying to tell everyone Tesla's a worthless company, and I believe he said it should go to 0. But it's like really like come on. So either way, I mean the analyst I guess you can say topic. We can go on this for hours, but either way, shifting over into some of the biggest movers today. Honestly, Tom, the market's not doing anything, but then again, it's only been open for 4 minutes. But these chip stocks, I mean, they're exploding.
Yeah, they are. We have AMD breaking out. We have Micron, MU breaking out as well. I think Pelosi grabbed some of Micron, which is kind of interesting. I know Qualcomm was having a really good day yesterday, and it looks like they're breaking above that high today as well. I will say Qualcomm's looking pretty good on the daily chart, Mike. Like, honestly, Qualcomm almost reminds me of Ford. If we look at Ford, do you see how it kind of consolidated here for a few weeks before it finally broke out? I feel like Qualcomm is kind of in that same exact setup here. It might not break out to the upside like Ford did, but I'm definitely going to keep it on the radar just in case it does.
Yeah, that's actually interesting because it is a very, very similar setup.
Yeah, it is. And sometimes like it's almost like a bullish flag on the longer term chart here. And I really like to see this, but if we do see a nice breakout like Ford did up above that high, it might be a pretty good entry right there on the day we finally see that break. But, if it doesn't break, it might end up going to the downside in a major way. So definitely be careful with it. Don't just hop in, because it looks the same.
Exactly. Alrighty. So looking at some of the plays we talked about, let's check in with Boeing really quickly. So Boeing's up like 1.7%. Honestly, it was looking really, really good a couple minutes ago, but it looks like we are seeing a little bit of profit taking right at open. I'm seeing a small support right around 220. I don't know if you're seeing that.
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing one around 220 as well. If we go on like the 1 hour chart, yeah, I'm definitely seeing like 220, just under it maybe too, like around 219. So yeah, I really think it might end up hitting that support and holding today. I really like that good news that they had with these 737s in China. That's always great to hear. Like I know that they had been talking about resuming their services for a long time now, and I'm really glad that they finally said that this month they'll finally do that. So I think it's great news, and I do think that 220 might end up holding up. If we look at it on like the 5-minute chart, we are getting some good bounces off of it.
Yeah. All right. And then I'm also seeing some positive action out of Visa and Mastercard. Both of these ones are definitely running up when having a really good start to the day.
Yeah, they really are. Visa's having a great day, breaking that like high of yesterday, which is really good. It looks like I'm seeing some resistance on Visa coming up, like maybe like right around 220 to 222. But I love the movement today. That's really good for these. I'm not going to say beaten down credit card companies, but these companies were pulling back pretty hard a few weeks ago, and they recovered back pretty quickly.
There we go. Just reading through some of the discords really quickly. But yeah. So looking at actually a couple other plays that we just talked about, TSM still going. That one's actually really blasting up, Tom. It has a ton of volume. It's up 9% so far. It is yet to have a red candlestick on the 5-minute chart, and it is blasting. I mean, this is crazy, almost 10%.
Yeah, it looks like we broke that all-time high. That's great to see. And it's another chip stock, and It's definitely an innovator. I'm glad to see him doing well like this. And wow, it's so crazy to see this stock breaking that high right there. Like that's awesome. And it, like you said, it's getting so much good volume coming into it right now. I don't know how high it's going to go, but we're all the way up to 145. I'm wondering if we'll get up to like maybe 147, maybe 150 today at the end. I mean, this is getting crazy.
So let me see some. So it looks like we broke all-time highs, right? Because I'm going to
Yeah,
like the
they did,
max
I believe,
weekly.
unless they broke all time highs for
Okay,
sure.
cool. Wow. Well, yeah. I mean, now at this point, it's like an earnings play. It's a breakout play. It's a new high type of breakout. So it's definitely popping up on a lot of people's scanners, and I'm sure that's kind of making the movement like exponential, you can say, because sometimes the company will report great earnings, but when you report great earnings and then you have this crazy volume coming in, TSM starts showing up on volume scanners, and then once you break all-time highs, then it starts to show up on all the new all-time high scanners, and then once you're up 9%, it starts to show up on all the top percent gainer scanners. So it's like it looks like this one is really snowballing, and the good news is that like it's not like it's just exploding out of nowhere. Like they did report pretty good earnings, record profit, and they're growing quite a bit.
Yeah, those earnings were really good. I was actually just analyzing that on the max daily chart. You can see how their EPS it's just been steadily growing, honestly, over the past couple of years. Like they started around, 0.41, 0.6, 0.7, 0.9. Now we're up to 1.15. Like it's just really good growth out of a really good chip company. And they also like bounced. How many times did they bounce on this support down here, Mike? Around 108 to 110. It was 1, 2, 3, 4 bounces on support. Like that's just crazy.
Yeah. Wow. We also have Beyond Meat starting to look pretty good. It's up 4% today. I will say it's holding its ground very well. And it had such an amazing run up. I believe it was. Okay, it was on Friday of last week, obviously, and it had such an amazing run up, like right at the beginning of the day, and then it ended up giving a lot of the gains back. But I do like this one. It has a pretty high short float. Additionally, it had some pretty good news lately, and it's also just had a good level. So I'm really watching this one, and I think it looks like it can definitely move higher.
Yeah, I think it can too. It looks pretty good. It has a lot of momentum today. Like you said, last week to end the week, it was pretty explosive. And I will say, it did consolidate a little bit to start this week, but I really like the movement. And if we can break like that high of Friday around maybe 73.30, I think that'll make for some pretty good movement this week. And yeah, I mean, looking at it on the daily chart, Mike, I really like Beyond, especially on the max daily. Like we can see it's bouncing on this support that it was hitting back in at the beginning of 2020. So I think that it's a pretty good move here, and I honestly really like the daily chart movement from the past couple months.
Yeah. Plus, it has that high short flow too, so at least some shorts are going to cover at least a little bit, and it just helps. I'm not saying we're going to see a full-blown short squeeze like we did with GameStop and AMC, but still, like when you have a stock running up and it has good news and a high short float, a lot of times that can end up being a pretty good setup, especially when the stock's at a good level like Beyond is, and it has a history of running up in like some pretty big ways. So I love to see this movement, and I think it'll do pretty well over the next couple days. And like I checked Beyond this morning, it was up 2%, and then right when we started talking about Beyond like a couple minutes ago, I could have swore it was at like up 4% or something like that. And now it's up 6.5%. And on a 1 minute chart, Tom, this thing is really running, and then volume's also coming in a pretty big way.
Yeah, it is. That's actually a pretty big volume candle here on the 1 minute. Like honestly, that's almost as much volume as came in yesterday and after hours. That's pretty crazy to see, actually. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, looking at it, I think that it's a pretty good setup. And Mike, I know they had that good news where they came out with those KFC like Beyond Chicken Nuggets. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe it's getting the stock to have some hype. It's been a while since they had some good news, and they got a good deal with KFC, so it seems like the stock's running. And that news last week was really good.
And then I don't know if you saw this one, Tom, but this news was a little bit more under the radar. But they also had some good news with Pizza Hut. And Pizza Hut Canada adds Beyond Meat's Italian sausage crumbles as permanent menu items. So that's good, news from Pizza Hut. Obviously, it didn't get the attention that KFC did, but so it's just good news overall, and it can definitely make the stock run up. And in terms of resistance levels, I'm seeing the main one at like $73.33. Are you seeing anything else?
Yeah, I would definitely look at like 73.30 today for like an intraday move if you're going to be watching it for a day trade. That'll be actually right above that high of Friday. And I think if we break that, we could get a pretty good run. I'm not going to say we'll hit 80 today, but I feel like we might get pretty close to it over the next few weeks.
There we go. All right. So looking at a couple other different plays. I don't know. I wanted to. We basically covered the main ones. I wanted to take a look at the precious metals like gold and silver, but honestly, they're not really moving.
Yeah, they're not really doing too much today. If we go look at slash GC, looks a little bit more fun to watch on the charts here. I know GLD can kind of move a little bit slow, but looking at the futures, it looks like gold might be dipping back down here. I know gold was doing pretty good, Mike, with that inflation data coming out, and whenever Powell spoke, gold ended up running up pretty good this week. But looking at it, it's just unfortunate to see it pulling back like this. And yeah, like you said, today it's not really doing anything at all. Some stocks that are starting to run though, Mike, is actually run RUN. A lot of these types of solar stocks, like we talked about Enphase, but it looks like RUN is now in second place on my watch list. The Enphase up here at the top, up 2.89%. It's not having the best movement in the world, but it does look pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's definitely moving up there with Enphase, like you said. Up 3% in the first 15 minutes. I'm definitely not going to complain about that. And runs at a pretty good level, too. These solar stocks are looking pretty good. What other setups do you like? What other setups are you eyeing up right now?
Yeah, I mean, for the longer term, I'm eyeing up a lot of these growth stocks. Like, I love RUN. I love DraftKings down here, Fastly. Corsair's another one of my favorites. Corsair's actually bouncing right at their like $20 support right now, which is going to be pretty interesting. They've retested this support a ton of different times, and I really hope that they end up holding this one here. But, in the end, though, I think for a longer term play, it's still a good price point to buy in for shares, but it still might take another dip to the downside. We don't know if this is the exact bottom yet, but as far as intraday moves, Mike, I know that TSM was the main one moving today intraday, but I know Boeing was having some good movement early on, and they've been kind of holding that 220 support that we were talking about earlier, and I'm really wondering if Boeing might start getting like a second coming this morning, and they might break 225.
It's holding up. It's up 2%, and is it bouncing off of the, 300 SMA?
Yeah, it's bouncing like right around the 300 SMA and then the 500 EMA, both.
Okay, gotcha. So it's holding its ground. That's good to see, and I'm glad to see Boeing finally running up because it's been a while before we saw some actual breakouts with this one. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it has.
So yeah, there we go. Beyond is now up 7%, Tom.
Beyond another percent. Look at that. They might be up above that high like we talked about, 73.30 right there.
There we go. All right, so I just want to welcome everyone to the stream really quickly. Thank you guys so much for joining today. Welcome Jesse, George, Hunter, Sam, Alex, Jerry, Abel, Kevin, I'm Fierce, Vicky, and Iranical. Thank you guys so much for joining. If you like the stream, it would help us out so much if you could smash that like button. It really means a lot to us, and it definitely helps us grow, so we'd really appreciate it if you could do that. And if you guys have any questions or any stocks you want us to cover, just let us know, and we can definitely take a look at them. But besides that, we'll definitely be cycling through some of the hottest stocks today. Of course, we have Beyond on the top. But Tom, actually to the downside, we do have some pretty notable movement coming out of Alibaba.
Wow, that is pretty unfortunate to hear, Mike. I know that the China stocks were doing pretty good yesterday. Not good to see them kind of breaking down today. I definitely don't like to see that. It's not my favorite thing to see. It looks like they fell below the 1,000 SMA, and they're below all the other SMAs as well, which is not a good sign when you're falling down this drastically. And yeah, it's not looking good to me today, Mike. And there is a pretty big support though. I'm seeing right around 132, but it's not looking good though.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I will say though, in the past when we saw the China stocks run up, sometimes we do see a couple hard red days sprinkled in. And I'm sure some people are just looking at Alibaba's chart just on a technical level and just trying to close their positions or whatever. Like there's still a lot of fear in this company, and like it takes time for that to like pass over. You know what I mean? Like over the past year or so, there's been a lot of selling pressure, and there's been a lot of really bad headlines. So I'm sure, whether it's someone that's just like holding shares or whatever, there's a lot of fear. So I guess you can say this is kind of expected, but then again, once I would say over time, it should be pretty good.
Yeah, and I will say that we also hit this resistance right here, right around 140 as well. Seemed like that was a pretty big level and ended up holding up. So, yeah, I mean, sometimes I guess you get close to those resistances and you end up hitting them and maybe coming back down like with what we're seeing now. And like you said, there's been a lot of selling pressure in these China stocks. I was glad to see China had some good news with Boeing this morning, helping them with that 737 MAX. But, other than that, like China's been, pretty lackluster this year, of course. Like they've been talking about delisting and like they've been the increasing regulations on IPOs and all types of different stuff. It's been really a crazy year. And then they've even had stuff like with, Taiwan and all this crazy stuff going on.
True, true, true. Yeah, crazy world, Tom. Alrighty. So then we have Iranical asking about Facebook. So, Tom, what's going on with Facebook?
Yeah, today it's not really doing anything. It's kind of just staying still. I will say it looks better than it looks worse in my opinion. It has been holding its ground and running up this morning. Kind of reminds me of a Boeing. Boeing just kind of dipped down at open, kind of held its ground right here ever since open. Facebook kind of reminds me of that. It just has been staying right around where it opened at. I would say if it can break up above this like 337.50 resistance up here, I think Facebook might start to get a pretty good move, but it looks like it's pretty slow so far. But I will say I like it more to the upside than I do the downside.
Good stuff. All right. And then we have George saying, I'm wondering if Bitcoin will hold 44,000 and use it as support from here. So let me pull up Bitcoin really quickly. Give me 1 second. So I just want to pull up the chart. Tom has it pulled up. So he said 44,000 as a support. I hope so. It's been struggling a lot. And if it does, I would say 40,000 is a pretty big support, but even 44,000 is also a pretty big support. Hopefully it holds this, so then it just makes a higher low. But yeah, it's been struggling a lot lately with a couple other cryptos as well. So, I guess we'll definitely keep it on our radar.
Yeah, we will. We'll have to see how 44K ends up doing today. It looks like a pretty good intraday level. So if we do end up holding it, it might be good, but it looks like it is dipping back down right now. I will say on that daily chart, Mike, I loved how Bitcoin bounced off 40K, like you said. I think that was such a good support level on a longer term basis. And man, if 40K holds up, that might be a pretty good bounce out of Bitcoin here.
Yeah, I will say the 40K support is a lot more significant than the 44K support.
Yeah, it is. And 44K looks like it's more of like an intraday level.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So good stuff there. Hopefully it holds up. And even if it doesn't, let's say in the worst case scenario, Tom, I feel like most people, and I might be wrong with this, but I feel like most people who are holding Bitcoin now are doing it with the long term in mind. So I feel like for most people, even if Bitcoin continues to fall, it should be a good buying opportunity. Let's say it even fell down to 36K. I feel like that would be a good opportunity. The only downside is if you're very over leveraged, then you might get margin called, and that would be a problem. But besides that, even if it does fall, I think it should be fine.
Yeah, I agree. And I was going back and looking at Bitcoin a lot on the daily charts a while ago because as we know, Bitcoin had a pretty big drop in the past. They fell from 20K all the way back down to $4,000 after that first huge initial run. And, that scares a lot of people, especially as Bitcoin is starting to fall back down right now. They think, well, Bitcoin fell, what was it, 75%, 80% right there or something really close. So they look at this and they go, well, it's down, maybe 35, 40% now. But, they're looking at it well, it could end up down 75, 80%. And, the thing that I've been really looking at, Mike, is like you said, a lot of people are in now with a longer term mindset. And then also we've been seeing institutions get in banks, lots of big players have been buying up Bitcoin. And, I don't think that these big players are going to let this thing fall 80% again.
That is true. And I will say that the world has changed dramatically from what was it, 2016 or 2017 when Bitcoin was initially
Yeah.
running up, and then I feel like Bitcoin is a lot more popular now than it was when it initially ran up. So I think it'll be fine either way. And then just like you said, Tom, like there's a lot of big players jumping in.
Yeah, like I've been seeing some big banks. Like I think we've been seeing reports of like JP Morgan starting to get some and like adding them into funds for different people and stuff like that. So sounds pretty good. And I know it's not just them. There's been multiple other ones too. But yeah, it's great to see like these institutions and just it's always good to see money flowing in. It seems like a pretty good thing for the future. And I will say, a lot of people have also been saying that these cryptos are going to be big for the metaverse. So we'll have to see how that ends up going.
True. And Tom, I'm sure like even if like some of these other institutions haven't announced that they're getting into Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, I'm sure that they are in some way and they're strategically just not saying it yet because they know, like, let's say like Goldman came out and said, hey, we're now requiring all of our portfolios to have some exposure to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's price is going to shoot up in a huge way. So you know what I mean? Like I'm sure that even there's institutions that we don't know about for sure that are at least getting involved somewhat behind the scenes. And that's just speculation, but I feel like that's what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, there probably is. I don't know how, how like with stocks, so obviously these institutions like have to report on some of this stuff. Like I'm
Right.
wondering, like with Bitcoin, like are they required to report that the same way they are with stocks? I'm sure it's kind of a strange deal with that.
Yeah, I'm very curious because like I know like it's kind of sounds very weird, but I know that obviously pump and dump schemes in the stock market is highly illegal, but it's actually legal with cryptocurrencies from my understanding. Like there's not specific rules related to cryptocurrencies just yet. So like there's like a lot of gray areas with all this stuff and it's actually a great point. So very interesting stuff there. And then we actually have George also mentioning Ford breaking $25. So let's take a look at Ford. Yeah, it's definitely looking pretty good. It's running up with a lot of momentum and volume.
Wow, it's really breaking that high there. That's awesome to see. I'm glad to see it running up. Look at this on the daily chart. It looks like a bullish flag set up again. Like, man, I've been seeing analysts like saying that Ford could keep breaking out, and it looks like it is. This is insane to see how Ford's moving like this. I know they've had some great innovations with the electric cars and everything like that over the past couple of years. And Mike, this is just insane. I cannot believe Ford with how much explosive movement it's had. Like, I know General Motors is doing well also, but man, Ford is just breaking those highs and is just running up in such a significant way. It's crazy to see. And I'm glad to see it, to be honest. A lot of people were discounting these companies like GM and Ford over the past couple of years, saying they'd be bankrupt with Tesla coming out. So, hey, I'm glad to see them kind of innovating and proving people wrong.
There we go. All right, and then we have Kathy saying, what do you think a strong resistance is for Lucid? So LCID, what's a strong resistance in your opinion, Tom?
Yeah, it looks like on the daily chart, Mike, we actually got pretty close to a pretty big resistance. I will kind of mark it here on the chart. I'm seeing one like really close to $47.50 to $48. And I will say, it looks like yesterday we got really close to this level. And let's go back and look at it on like a 5-minute chart just to see like how close we got. Yeah, it looks like we almost touched that like right on the dot. So I would definitely use $47.50 to $48 as a good resistance here. It looks like it is having some trouble moving up above that. And I will say it had some pretty explosive movement this week. So maybe expect it to consolidate today.
Gotcha. Then we have W asking about DraftKings. So DraftKings is not really doing anything today. It's slightly in the green. It's up 0.3%. Again, like it's not really doing anything. There's not too much to say about it. There is a pretty big support right at 26. If it fell below that, there's another support right around like 25 to like $25.20. To the upside, we have some resistance right around 27 and another like main level just under 28. But besides that, there isn't too much going on with it as of today. But I will say that they had some pretty good news yesterday. They're launching online sports betting in Oregon, and they're also what do you call it? They're also the what was it, Tom? Like the lottery hoster for Oregon.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to be doing like a lottery deal with them, and it was kind of confusing with the lottery aspect, but it's cool to see that they're getting that online sports book there. I think that'll be very interesting, but yeah, in the end, like the lottery news was a little bit confusing, but I will say it was definitely something that pertains to the Oregon lottery, and I will say it's a pretty good news. Anytime they're getting into anything like this, I think it'll be a really cool thing to look at. And I actually brought up the news here from Thinkorswim or from the Thinkorswim news tab just so we can kind of see it. And it kind of says there's a bunch of quotes on here. And if you guys want to get more into it, you can go check it out on the Thinkorswim news tab under DraftKings. Just scroll down a little bit. It was in the news from yesterday.
Gotcha. All right. So either way, there's good news coming out with them. I think this is also coming out at a good time. But I don't know if it's going to be. Actually, we'll what do you call it? Like I know New York will be in like perfect timing to bet on the Super Bowl. I don't know if it's going to be the same for this scenario.
Yeah, and that's going to be my favorite thing that happened over the past couple of weeks is obviously that New York news. I feel like that's going to be a lot bigger than the Oregon news, but yeah, in the end, like this is it's pretty crazy to see how the stock has been moving this week, and I'm glad it's been holding up, because a lot of these growth stocks started to move down again, and I'm just glad that DraftKings finally got some good news, Mike. Like it's really good, especially like you said, right ahead of the Super Bowl and all these big events in New York.
Yeah, I'm curious how their earnings look over this next quarter because there have been some big games. We had all the college football games, but then the Super Bowl is coming up, so I think that'll be very interesting. So yeah, I'm actually curious when their next earnings report is. Earnings report for DraftKings. It looks like it is on. I thought I read somewhere yesterday saying February 24th. Let me just confirm this. So. February 24th, but it says pre-market and then it's not confirmed. So it's February 18th. It looks like on Thinkorswim. When's the Super Bowl, Tom?
The Super Bowl, I always know it's like right around the end of January, beginning of February. Let me go ahead and look this up. It looks like it's going to be February 13th. So that looks like it's going to be just ahead of the earnings. It's just it's kind of weird, like you said, how the earnings are showing up a little different. So yeah, it looks like they might get reported during these. So that might be pretty good for them actually.
That's good. All right, so I'll take it. Hopefully that boosts the stock.
And hey, they're playing at SoFi Stadium too, or SoFi.
Yeah, well, that's in what is it, San Diego or no? Is it? Let me see.
It says it's in Inglewood, California, but okay. I think that's where San Diego plays.
Let's see. Let me see. I'm pulling it up right now. I knew it was in California somewhere. So yeah, it's in LA. So it's actually a little bit north. But yeah, that's cool either way. Hopefully the stock boosts up because of that. Then we have Jesse saying, sad I sold my 25 strike calls this morning to break even on Ford. I'm sure everyone in the chat has been in a position where we're like, damn, like I wish I would have held on to that position just a little bit longer. But either way, it's better to get out at break even than take a loss. But it is nice to see Ford moving on the same note.
Yeah, it really is. And to be honest, I had Ford a long time ago on the daily chart. I had him all the way back here before COVID happened, and I ended up selling them out at around $10 a share. But yeah, I couldn't believe the way that they ended up moving after COVID. Like, Mike, it kind of seemed like Ford was, they were on the brink of bankruptcy or something. Like their share price was getting down to $4 a share. Like, man, it seemed like they were going nowhere. And then they just exploded with this EV news out of nowhere. Like, what innovators here? Yeah,
it is true. To be fair though, they just do have like a ton of shares outstanding. So for example, like they have 4 billion shares outstanding, which is an insane amount. Their market cap is almost $100 billion. So it's like they're definitely a pretty big company. But I know what you mean, though. Like it definitely was looking pretty scary, and when the pandemic hit.
I wonder what that market cap looked like back then.
Well, I would assume so. If the stock's at 25, and then let's see, the market cap's like $100 billion. So what was
it's that $4?
Yeah. So it was definitely significantly lower, but I definitely know what you mean in terms of like seeing like a $4 stock, and then now it's at 25. So either way, it is looking pretty good, and I think it's awesome how they are innovating into like the EV space.
Yeah, that's kind of huge. They've been coming out that F-150 Lightning, the electric Mustang, and General Motors has been coming out with the electric Hummer and stuff like that, and they've been doing pretty well. So seems like the EV sector is the way to go, obviously, for the future. It looks like investors are loving it, and the stocks are doing pretty well. And I will say, some of these companies, some of the better EV companies, I will say I like them for the long term, but I can't figure out what type of valuations make it right. Like, especially like with Rivian and Lucid, like those two companies are just too new almost to try to like make valuations on.
Yeah, it's tough, And like just a couple weeks ago, Rivian was the world's third largest auto manufacturer, and they had zero in revenue, and now they're not the third largest, but still, it's like they're still trading at like a heavy valuation, and Rivian has potential. It's just like, how much do you want to value the company at? You know what I mean? So there's definitely a lot that goes into it, and you're right. Like, it can be tough to value some of these growth companies because like you hear a bunch of great things about them, but at the same time, like when the results are terrible, it's like what do you do?
Yeah, exactly. And they came in with those really bad earnings and bad production numbers and stuff. So, man, hopefully they do better this year and over the next few earnings reports, or else they're probably going to keep dipping down, honestly, in the short term. And, Rivian, they have big backers. Like, I can't remember the exact numbers, Mike, but I think Ford has like a 15% stake in them. And then Amazon has like something close to a 15% stake too. Like, I know those companies are pretty invested in here, and I would just hope that it does a little bit better. But yeah, I see what you mean. It definitely needs to have some good production, and they need to, get those factories rolling.
No doubt. All right, and then we have Abel asking about a double bottom on Tesla. So how's Tesla looking?
Yeah, intraday, it looks like it's kind of bouncing right off that $1,100 support this morning. It has a pretty decent bounce back up. It looks like on the 1-minute chart. I'm not really seeing a huge double bottom here, but I will say it looks like it's been bouncing around 1,100 quite a bit today. Looks like it's actually coming back down. It might retest it. So I will say be a little careful with Tesla. It's kind of been all over. But if it does start to break back up above like 11.15, I think it might be a pretty good play. But I don't know, Mike. I don't really see too much of a double bottom. And maybe he means on the daily, but I don't really see one there either.
Yeah, I think he meant intraday. To be honest, I was a little bit late to his question or his comment, I should say. So I think he might have been referring to like 10 minutes ago or so, a little bit like 10 to 15 minutes ago, like right when Tesla was bouncing around like 11.04. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's like kind of a double bottom. It's not the most defined setup in the world, but it's decent.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to look at Tesla on these like intraday charts because like we can see on the 1 minute, it's had some candles that started out at 11.07 and then the candle extended all the way down to 1,100 even. So like, it's been all over the place this morning. And honestly, I'm kind of waiting for it to just have a clear break. Like if we can start to either fall below this $1,100 support, I think it could be a pretty good play to the downside. If we start to break out up above this double top or triple top around 11.15, I think it might make for a pretty good play to the upside. Honestly, Mike, this might be a pretty good like day trade opportunity if we do see it start to make one of those types of moves.
There we go. All right, so we have I'm Fierce mentioning DWAC. He said DWAC still being a monster today. I wanted to play it, but frightened how volatile it is. Yeah, it is one of the most volatile stocks in the market. The IV's 170%, which is insane. And if I look back a little bit throughout history, it was at 240% just like a couple weeks ago. So either way, like it definitely has that momentum. It's holding up, and like this one's going to be heavily influenced by news and like hype because there's not too much like released about Truth Social just yet. Like I know it's supposed to release on President's Day in like a month or so, but we're still kind of far away from that. So it's like mainly like a hype play as of now.
Yeah, it really is. It's just a big hype play, and it can get some good momentum like when it starts running, like with what we're seeing. And I think it's a pretty good catalyst or a pretty good candidate for day trades with shares. I don't really like the options on this one too much, Mike. Maybe you like them for intraday plays, but I don't know. That IV is at 170%. Like you mentioned, it's volatile and it's going to be going all over the place. So for options, it's not my favorite, but I will say I like it for intraday trades with shares. And, it's only up 1% today, but yesterday it was having some explosive moves.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the options either right now. And like just for a quick comparison, Tom, let's head over to SPYG, so SPY-G. This is an ETF. It's right around $70 or so. If we went to the February expiration at the money, it would cost $200. All right, so just keep that in mind. February expiration at the money, $200. Now, if we went back to DWAC, it's trading at almost the same price as SPYG. February expiration at the money costs $1,300. So, that goes to show you exactly what a high implied volatility will do. So I'm with you. I'm not a huge fan of the options, but what can be really smart with this one is if you got shares and you sold a covered call, because the options are so expensive. Like, let's say you wanted to play this one, what you could do is, let's say you bought like 100 shares at $72, you can literally go to like the February expiration, you can sell like I don't know, like even if you sold like the 75 strike call, you would get paid almost $1,100 cash today. So like if you bought in at, let's say 7,200, if you bought in at 72, 100 shares at 72, you got paid $1,100 for the covered call. That would bring your cost basis down to $6,100. So that's just like you're buying shares at 61 when really you're buying shares at 72. So you can use covered calls to your advantage.
Wow, that would actually be a really good way to go. And definitely look at that one, guys, if you guys are looking at DWAC, because those options are pretty expensive. And that would be a really good way to take advantage of these, really high premiums here. That's a really smart way, Mike. And, that can happen. That can be a good way to play a lot of these stocks. But, DWAC, like Mike, like how you said to like get shares and maybe do that until February, like, do you think holding DWAC shares, if it starts falling down in a major way, would be a smart thing? Or would you just cut that position? Like, let's say if it did start going against you.
See, it's tough, because I know DWAC is trading at like a decent valuation right now. So it ultimately depends on whether you think this company has potential or not. So it's like right now the company is worth $2 billion, which, it seems like a lot, but $2 billion isn't that much. And, let's say we compared it to Twitter, which I know Twitter's a beast, but Twitter's trading at a valuation of $32 billion, and Twitter's stock is very low right now. It's at $40 when a couple months ago it was at $70. So it's like if DWAC just becomes a fraction of what Twitter is, they can easily double. So it's like it's hard to say, but at the same time, this whole Truth Social can be a flop and then you lose everything. So it's like it's definitely risky in that sense, but it's like if you're going at it for a trade, then yeah, I would just cut it. But if you want to roll the dice, then it's not the worst move to make. So it's like it's definitely a tough one. But if you wanted to play it a little bit like safe, or like let's say you bought the shares at 73 right now, and then instead of selling an out of the money covered call, you can actually sell an in the money covered call. So if you bought shares at 73 and then you sold the 60 strike covered call for like 1,800, you would still be protected in a way. Like you wouldn't get the massive upside, but I don't know. There's pros and cons to it, and you can like adjust the strikes to whatever fits your risk appetite.
Yeah, and what I really like, Mike, about that February 18th expiration is that they announced that they're going to be launching the platform on February 21st. So that would be pretty good as far as timing goes. Like you'll be getting out right at the end, hopefully right at the end of the run up into that launch. And, that might be a pretty good strategy if you guys really like DWAC and you wanted to play. Honestly, Mike, that seems like a pretty cool way to go.
Yeah, so it's not bad. And, just like you said, that February expiration would be perfect because, like, you're kind of, like, capitalizing off of peak hype, and then whether the stock shoots up or if it tanks down, like, you're protected in at least one way. So should be good there. It's definitely an interesting play. Then we have George mentioning CAT is testing 225 again. Looking at CAT, yeah, it's definitely running up there. It looks like it has a little bit of resistance right around 226.
Yeah, I love this one on the daily. It's looking pretty good. I definitely see that resistance there too, Mike, and hopefully it starts to break out of that because it looks like it's getting some pretty good movement. Now, this one's not going to be the biggest mover in the world. As we know, they're, pretty good. I'm not going to say I guess they're kind of like a value stock in a way. They just move pretty slow and steady for the most part, and I think that they should do pretty good if they break up above 226.
Sounds good. A group of stocks that's kind of running up under the radar, Tom, are these cruise lines. Like they're actually really popping up today, and I'm not seeing too much chatter about them.
Yeah, I actually noticed this as well. CCL was climbing up my watch list a few minutes ago, as well as Delta Airlines. I don't know like what's going on with these sectors. Looks like Delta had some crazy earnings come out today. I was actually interested in this one, but I didn't get to see any of the articles for it just yet. But looks like it's getting some nice movement up, and maybe these good earnings are what's finally pushing these ones back up.
It's good stuff. All right, and then we have George saying MTTR is testing support here on the hour, waiting to see if it breaks or it bounces. Yeah, MTTR it's been struggling, but it's definitely at a support just like you said. Where was that? Right around 1450.
Yeah, right around that. It was a low of looks like on Monday today or Monday this week. So yeah, definitely look at MTTR. If they fall below that, it's probably not going to look too good today. But man, I've been really looking at Matterport for a good buy here with shares, but it looks like it might start going lower.
Not good. How about poor Zoom, Tom? It just keeps struggling. Like it's at a good level. Their earnings have been great. You would think with all the new variants and everything like that they would continue to produce solid earnings, but it's just like every week just more selling pressure.
Yeah, Zoom's another one. It's just unfortunate to see him keep breaking these supports like this. It's never good, Mike. And a lot of these growth stocks, they just keep going down, like you mentioned. It's not good lately. Some of them are popping back, but unfortunately, like with Zoom, it's still going down. And then we have a lot of other ones in the red today as well, like Fastly's in the red, Lucid's in the red, Blink's in the red. Even Roblox is in the red again. It's just it's not looking good, especially I feel like for these I don't want to say metaverse plays, but I guess they are like Unity, Matterport, Roblox, like all these stocks are in the red, and it's not good for Zoom either. AI's down. It's just, yeah, all the growth stocks seem like they're having some trouble again.
And what's interesting with Zoom is that the short float's less than 5%. So this selling pressure, Tom, is not short sellers. I mean, of course, it might be a tiny fraction, but a 5% short float, these like shorts aren't even really in this stock anymore. So it's like, what does that tell you? It tells you that people who've been bag holding this stock probably at $500 a share or $400 a share or even $300 a share are selling their stock now. And it's like when it rains, it pours, because the same people who were super greedy buying Zoom at $575 each are now selling their shares probably at a huge loss. And when it rains, it pours, So when one institution or one trader sells for a loss, it drives the price lower, and then it causes more people to sell, and it causes more people to sell, and it's like a giant snowball effect. But what I'm curious is like, how many great earnings reports do we need before this stock turns around?
Yeah, exactly. Like the earnings have been holding up pretty well. I know that they've had some bad outlooks and stuff, but they've been beating on their EPS, and I know that their revenue came in under than or less than expected, I believe. But Mike, I mean, what was it up year over year? I know you probably know the exact number. It was like 30 or 40%, I believe.
It was up a lot. I don't know the exact number, but it was a lot. And it was a lot, Tom, in a time where no one was expecting it. Everyone was saying, all right, Zoom, they're going to have a great 2020, maybe a great start to 2021, and then they're going to fall off the board. But it's like Zoom, the company itself, acknowledged that, hey, yeah, our revenue might look lower over the next year or over the next coming months. And then, like, that's their own expectations, and then they come in and then they beat analyst expectations as well as their own expectations. So it's like they're doing very, very well, but it's just like when it rains, it pours. Like the selling pressure is contagious, and I feel like now everyone's like, all like the potential buyers are looking at this stock and they're like, well, it just keeps falling, so I don't want to touch it yet. And then like it just like, you know what I mean? Like it makes like buyers scared too, but I'm not really too worried about it, because at the end of the day, like if they keep producing the results that they are, eventually their stock's going to pop in a huge way.
Yeah, it should. And I'll be honest, like on the daily chart, like we just fell through a major $200 support. That was definitely not good once we fell below that. And, we've been kind of confirming off of it. So the technicals haven't looked the best. And then, as we're going down, we're now going to be retesting this huge 150 support, it looks like. I know this stock was having a lot of movement around 150. So hopefully 150 is finally the bottom. And if it is, I think I could live with that.
I'm with you. Hopefully. But yeah, I mean, we had a pretty good stream, Tom. Do you have any last minute plays or anything?
Yeah, a lot of stocks in the red. I will say my watch list is probably 50-50 today. Some are green, some are red. A lot of these stocks I was really interested in today were these bank stocks, Mike, like Bank of America and JP Morgan. It looks like they're doing decent today, but they're not doing as good as I was really hoping. I know that inflation data came in yesterday better than or right at expectations. And these banks ended up popping up early in the morning. I was kind of looking for them to continue up today and maybe break those highs, but as we can see, JP Morgan kind of ended up double topping right here. Maybe if JP Morgan breaks above this level, it could be a good day trade later on. So definitely throw these banks on the radar. I'm definitely watching them. And, one of my favorite plays over the past couple of weeks, Mike, has been Boeing. And, they got pretty close to finally breaking that high of pre-market today. I'm going to really look for them to maybe have another run here.
There we go. And then with the last comment, we have Manny asking about Starbucks. So I will admit Starbucks is looking pretty decent today. It's at a good level. It's just under that 105 support. So it's definitely not looking bad. And it should be fine for the long term. And for the short term, I can definitely see a pop back up as long as it just holds its ground. It has been struggling a lot over the past couple of weeks. So as long as we see just some price action where it doesn't have to be exploding, but as long as it's just holding its ground, I think we should be good.
Yeah, I really like this one for the longer term, Mike. I think it's pretty safe. They've always been a pretty safe company, I should say. They do have their dips, their fair share of movement to the downside, like with COVID, of course. But in the end, though, they're pretty good. And I know that we've mentioned this before, Mike, but every time you go to Starbucks, what do you see? You see a line wrapped around the building. It takes 40 minutes to get your coffee. So it's kind of crazy, actually, how many people go to Starbucks. I don't see them going anywhere over the next few years.
Yeah, they're a solid company, and they've done pretty well. So good stuff there. Thank you guys so much for joining today. We had a great time. We basically covered all the most important movers for today. So far it looks like there's definitely a good amount of selling pressure, so definitely keep that on your radar. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and have an amazing rest of your day.